Welcome to Psyche Talks. Today we're diving deep into strategic thinking. It's one of those skills you hear about a lot, maybe in business or leadership.
Right, often associated with that high-level stuff.
Exactly. But it's actually fundamental, really, to almost every part of life, careers, relationships, just achieving your goals.
Yeah, definitely. And our guide for this exploration is the audiobook Strategic Thinking, the key to overcoming any challenge. It sort of promises to unpack how elite thinkers approach problems, how they predict things, adapt, basically how they win.
Sounds useful. So our mission today is to figure out what strategic thinking really means, pull out the core ideas, and see how, you listening can actually start using this stuff.
Without getting totally overwhelmed by theory, practical insights. That's the goal.
Okay, let's jump in then. What actually is strategic thinking? Why should we care?
Well, the really striking thing, I think, is how different it is from how most of us operate day to day. Our default is often just reactive.
Reactive. How so?
Dealing with whatever pops up, emails, problems,
Hmm.
making quick decisions based on habit, or maybe emotion, or just what seems urgent right now. The audiobook uses this analogy of a chess player just looking one move ahead, just reacting to the opponent's last move.
Right, just seeing the immediate threat or opportunity. So the strategic thinker.
They step back. They're trying to see the whole board, the whole game. They're thinking several moves ahead, anticipating responses, figuring out the best position for the long run.
Not just the quick capture.
Exactly.
Oh,
It's more than just a technique. It's presented as a discipline, almost a different way of seeing the world, constantly thinking about that bigger picture.
It feels like everything around us kind of pushes against that. Constant notifications, social media.
That's a really key point the audiobook makes. It argues that this constant buzz, the need for instant feedback, the sheer amount of information, it keeps us stuck in that reactive mode.
We're almost conditioned for it.
Yeah, conditioned to respond instantly, not to pause, reflect, and plan.
So a strategic thinker has to actively resist that.
Precisely. They consciously carve out space to think, to consider different futures, always keeping their main goals in sight. They're guided by that long-term vision, not just the immediate pressure.
Okay, so if we had to boil it down, a concise definition.
I'd say it's the ability to think ahead, analyze situations from multiple viewpoints, not just yours, but others involved too, and then make choices based on where you are now and where you want to end up.
Proactively shaping things, not just being pushed around by them.
That's a great way to put it. And the audiobook also talks about tactics versus strategy. That distinction seems important.
Ah, right. How did they fit together?
Think of tactics as the individual actions, the specific things you do. Sending an email, running a specific ad campaign, holding a certain meeting. Those are tactics.
Okay.
Strategy is the bigger overarching plan. It's the why behind the tactics, ensuring they all work together towards your main long-term objective.
So you can have great tactics, but still fail if there's no overall strategy.
Exactly. The audiobook really hammers this home. Flawless execution of tactics without a guiding strategy can lead you absolutely nowhere, or even backwards. You might win a few skirmishes, but lose the war, so to speak.
Got it. Okay, so we have a feel for what it is. Let's dig into the core principles. What makes strategic thinking tick?
Well, one of the absolute fundamentals is balancing your long-term vision against, the immediate pressures and realities.
The day-to-day stuff.
Right. Strategic thinkers don't let the daily grind completely obscure the ultimate goal. Every decision, even small ones, gets weighed against. How does this position me for the future?
So avoiding the quick win if it compromises something bigger down the road.
Precisely. Don't sacrifice long-term stability for short-term convenience. That's key.
That makes a lot of sense. What's another principle?
Adaptability. This is huge. The audiobook stresses that your strategy isn't some rigid, unchanging plan. It has to be flexible.
Life throws curveballs, right?
Constantly. So being able to pivot, adjust your approach based on new information or unexpected events, that's crucial. You need situational awareness and agility. Think of it like sailing, your destination, but you constantly adjust the sails based on the wind.
So it's not about stubbornly sticking to plan A no matter what.
Definitely not. It's about being committed to the goal, but flexible about the path. And a big part of that flexibility, that awareness, comes from understanding consequences, specifically first and second order consequences.
Okay, explain that one a bit more. First and second order.
Sure. Most people focus on the immediate result of a choice. That's the first order consequence. Easy to see.
Like, I cut spending, I save money now.
Exactly. That's first order. The strategic thinker asks, okay, and then what? What happens because I save that money? Maybe second order. team morale drops because training was cut. Or third order, innovation slows down.
Ah, the ripple
The
effects.
ripple effects. You need to think at least 1 or 2 steps beyond the immediate outcome. It helps you spot potential downsides others might miss.
That requires some real thought. Thinking ahead like that must involve risk, too.
Absolutely. Which leads to another principle, risk management. Strategic thinkers aren't necessarily risk-averse, but they're risk-intelligent,
Meaning?
meaning they don't gamble recklessly. They analyze. They weigh the potential upside against the potential downside, try to figure out the odds, and crucially, they plan for things going wrong. They have contingency plans.
Thinking about what if it fails?
Yes, it's calculated risk-taking based on analysis, not just a gut feeling. And related to that is focusing on what you can actually control.
Right, can't control everything.
No way.
Mhm.
Market changes, competitor moves, global events. Lots of things are outside your influence. Strategic thinkers pour their energy into the levers they can pull, the actions they can take.
But they still prepare for the uncontrollable stuff.
They try to, yes. Through that risk management and contingency planning we just talked about, you focus on your actions, but anticipate external shifts.
Sounds very proactive.
It is. And part of being proactive is also trying to anticipate and maybe even shape future trends. Looking for patterns, seeing where things might be heading before it's obvious to everyone.
Getting ahead of the curve.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Seeing the shifts coming and positioning yourself to benefit or at least to mitigate the negative impact is about looking towards the horizon.
Okay. And you mentioned one more earlier, prioritization.
Yes, ruthless prioritization, as the audiobook puts it. This often connects to the Pareto principle to the 80-20 rule.
Where most of your results come from a small fraction of your effort.
Right. Roughly 80% of outcomes from 20% of inputs. Strategic thinkers are laser-focused on identifying that vital 20% and dedicating their resources, time, energy, money there.
And that means saying no to other things.
Absolutely. Saying no is a critical strategic skill.
Sure.
Saying no to distractions, to opportunities that seem good but don't align with the core strategy, to things that drain resources from that vital 20%.
That can be really hard to do in practice.
It really can. But it's essential for protecting your focus and making real progress on your most important goals. Now, all this foresight, analysis, prioritization, it all relies on clear thinking, which brings us to critical thinking.
Right. It feels like critical thinking is the foundation, the toolkit you need to do strategic thinking effectively.
That's a perfect way to put it. The audiobook calls it a key weapon. It's what ensures your strategies aren't built on shaky ground, on biases, assumptions, or flawed logic.
So what does that look like in practice? Questioning assumptions.
That's a huge part of it, not just taking things at face value, challenging the way things have always been done, asking why, digging for evidence, considering if there are other ways to look at the situation, and importantly, questioning your own assumptions too.
Things we just believe without realizing it.
Exactly. And we all have biases that distort our thinking. Confirmation bias is a big one the book mentions.
Where we look for proof that we're already right.
Precisely. We naturally gravitate towards information that confirms our existing beliefs and ignore or dismiss evidence that contradicts them. A critical thinker has to actively fight that urge
Ow.
by deliberately seeking out opposing viewpoints, by looking for reasons why your idea might be wrong. Basically, playing devil's advocate against yourself. It makes your final conclusions much stronger.
Like stress testing your own ideas.
Exactly. Another trap is confusing correlation with causation.
Just because two things happen together doesn't mean one caused the other.
Right. Ice cream sales and crime rates might both go up in the summer, but one doesn't cause the other. There's a third factor, heat. Strategic thinkers need to dig deeper with data and logic to find the real causes.
It's easy to jump to conclusions otherwise.
Very easy. And the book also highlights awareness of other cognitive biases, like the availability heuristic.
Where vivid or easily recalled events seem more likely.
Yes. Or the sunk cost fallacy, continuing with something bad just because you've already invested so much. Knowing these common mental errors helps you spot them in yourself and others.
It's like debugging your own thought process.
Yeah, that's a good analogy. And clear language is vital too. Using precise terms forces clearer thinking. Vague language often hides vague understanding.
If you can't explain it simply.
You probably don't understand it well enough. The audiobook also brings up mental models.
Frameworks for thinking.
Exactly. They're like thinking tools or structures to help analyze complex situations. Things like first principles thinking, breaking problems down to fundamental truths. Or the Pareto principle we mentioned, inversion thinking about what you want to avoid. Occam's razor preferring simpler explanations. Second-order thinking, considering ripple effects.
So they give you different angles to approach a problem.
Precisely. Proven frameworks to structure your analysis.
Hmm.
And underpinning all of this critical thinking is uh, intellectual humility.
Being willing to admit you're wrong.
And change your mind when the evidence points that way. It's tough, but crucial for learning and adapting your strategy effectively.
Okay, so sharpening the mind with critical thinking sets the stage. How does this translate into making better decisions?
Well, strategic decision-making absolutely starts with clarity of objectives. You have to know exactly what you're trying to achieve. What does success look like for this specific decision?
Without a clear target, you're just shooting in the dark.
Pretty much. Then, you gather information. But strategically, you need enough to be informed, but not so much that you get stuck in analysis paralysis.
Balancing research with the need to actually act.
Exactly. And how you frame the problem itself is critical. Sometimes just looking at a challenge from a different perspective opens up entirely new solutions.
Reframing a problem as an opportunity, maybe?
That kind of thing, yes. It changes how you approach it. When you have options, using something like a decision matrix can help.
What's that?
It's basically a structured way to compare options. You list your choices, identify the key factors or criteria that matter for your objective, maybe weight them by importance, and score each option. It introduces some objectivity.
Take some of the gut feeling out, focuses on the criteria.
Right. Which is helpful when assessing risk and uncertainty. You're not looking for guarantees, you rarely get those. You're looking for calculated probabilities. What's the likely outcome? What are the potential downsides? Is the potential reward worth the risk?
And thinking about those second-order consequences again, presumably.
Always. What happens after the immediate result? What are the knock-on effects? It has to be part of the decision process.
The book also mentioned reversible versus irreversible decisions. That sounds useful.
Yeah, it's a really practical distinction. If a decision is easily undone, like trying a new software tool, you can often make it more quickly. The cost of being wrong is low.
But if it's hard or impossible to reverse, like selling a major asset or making a huge public commitment.
Then you need much more rigorous analysis and deliberation. Don't rush irreversible decisions.
Got it. And what about emotions and decision making?
Big factor. Strategic thinking requires emotional discipline. Acting purely on anger, fear, or excitement is usually a bad idea. The audiobook mentions the value of a cooling off period.
Like the 24-hour rule, wait a day before responding to that angry email.
Exactly that kind of principle. Let the initial emotion subside so you can think more clearly. And finally, learn from your choices.
Looking back.
Yeah, conducting regular reviews, what worked, what didn't, why. It helps you spot patterns in your own decision-making, good and bad, and improve over time. And always remember, opportunity cost.
What you give up by choosing one path over another.
Exactly. The value of the next best alternative you didn't choose. It's part of the calculation.
Wow. Okay, so putting it all together, it's a very intentional, forward-looking way of operating.
It really is. And the key takeaway, I think, is that strategic thinking isn't some mystical talent only CEOs or generals have. It's a set of skills, mental habits that anyone can learn and cultivate.
And by applying these principles thinking long-term, being adaptable, using critical thinking, making deliberate choices, you really can shift from just reacting to life.
To proactively shaping your path and achieving more of what you want. It gives you a real edge.
So, for everyone listening, maybe take a moment after this to reflect. Think about a current challenge or goal.
Yeah, ask yourself, what assumptions am I making here? What might be the second-order consequences of my current approach? Could I reframe this problem? Even applying one or two of these ideas can make a difference.
Definitely food for thought. This deep dive really just scratches the surface, doesn't it?
It does. Hopefully, it sparks some curiosity, encourages you to explore these ideas more, and start developing your own strategic mindset.
It certainly gave me a lot to think about.
Thank you for your support and for listening.